Hello, friends. All In is next Sunday, and I happen to be going with my partner. And the main event is going to be Will Ospreay versus Kenny Omega, and I'm ecstatic about seeing this match live. Now, I thought in honour of this, I'm going to watch every single Will Ospreay versus Kenny Omega singles match up until this point. As far as I know, there are three. There's one that I've yet to see, which I'm just going to watch now, from PWG All-Star Weekend 11, Night 2, which was the end of 2015, I believe. And obviously, there's one from Wrestle Kingdom in 2023, which at the time I watched that, I thought, God, this is my favourite match ever. It's amazing. The brutality of it was just, for me, it was unexpected. And there was a level of psychology in it and storytelling that was amazing. And I thought, fuck, the grifters should give this a watch if they think these guys are just flippy shit. But obviously they don't care about that. And then their match at Forbidden Door later that year, well, in the summer, it was like the inverse of that, with Will Ospreay giving the brutality to Kenny Omega, and obviously Don Callis being in his corner, and that was also an amazing match and came to a brutal climax as well. At that time, I don't think it I didn't see it on the level of the Wrestle Kingdom match, but I'm going to re-watch these matches, and I'm going to watch this PWG match for the first time. Now, I've only seen the Wrestle Kingdom match once, so I wonder if my opinion will change, because to me, at that point, I thought, God, this is like my favourite modern match ever. But then, Will Ospreay versus Bryan Danielson happened, like, a year and a half later, maybe, and that's probably it, but the level of wrestling these days, especially around AEW and New Japan, and from what I hear, Joshi Wrestling and Stardom, which I don't really watch a lot of, but I know I should, definitely. Like, the level of wrestling these days is off the fucking scale, if you want those big epic matches, you know. But it depends. It just depends what you like, because I expect a lot of old school wrestling fans wouldn't like it, or wrestling fans that just are content with WWE, they might not like it, but they should watch this kind of stuff, because the storytelling's there, the character elements there, as well as the action and determination and grit and fire and passion that these guys give. But, you know, that's a story for another time. I'm going to watch these matches. I'm going to try my best to watch them in order and give my thoughts, like, dip in during and after. But, like, I might not have the time, because it's still daytime here and I've got stuff to do. So we will see. Like, it might be a bit of continuity errors. I mean, it is me after all. You are watching my channel. Like, for the 5 of you that's watching, thank you very much. You know what to expect. Okay, so I just watched Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay at PWG All-Star Weekender. And yeah, here's my initial thoughts. It's very strange watching Will Ospreay from this era. He looks so young. He looks very young, but really, he is still pretty young. Like, he's in his early 30s now. But I feel like this was the equivalent of maybe seeing someone like Kenny Omega against, like, Nick Wayne from a few years ago, or even like Dante Martin from like 2020, even though maybe like Dante Martin was getting a bit overrated at that time, and seeing how he is now, definitely overrated. But it was a fun match, I thought. Like, it's definitely the veteran against the rookie. Ospreay's like maybe 3+ years into his professional career here, and Kenny's, well, he's been doing it like maybe 12, 13 years by this point. You know, Omega, he's in that junior heavyweight role, like kind of on the run to getting into the heavyweight role and being in those world beating matches with Okada like a year later. A month after this match, it was maybe a month or a few months, I actually saw Kenny Omega live in Wellsprings Leisure Centre in Taunton against a guy called Ultimo Tiger, who's kind of like a British luchador. And they had like a 15-20 minute match, and Kenny Omega put him over and stuff. And it was amazing that Kenny Omega was still like traveling around the world doing this in obscure indies and stuff when he was like in New Japan, like in prominent roles with Bullet Club and the Elite and, you know, the junior heavyweight division and all that. And I felt very lucky seeing that, like up close, seeing a Kenny Omega match up close. And I haven't again, but this was a very fun match. You know, Kenny Omega was doing like some comical heel tactics, like some eye pokes and raking the eyes along the ropes and stuff. And Ospreay, you know, he was like doing his flips and stuff, but there was like abdominal stretches in there and holds. And there was some interesting spots. There was like an Oklahoma Stampede ram into the turnbuckle, which is a ram into the turnbuckle into a running power slam, which Omega did onto Ospreay, which is quite cool, quite an old school kind of thing, like which Dr. Death Steve Williams would do. There's some like chainsaw comedy arm spot. Ospreay did a springboard corkscrew moonsault to the outside, which is nice. Kenny Omega was like, you know, he was being Kenny Omega, doing his like comedy gesture, selling a little bit. I was like a nice tiger suplex as usual. The jumping Hurricanrana by Ospreay was like pretty damn good, and like a Hadouken and a powerbomb after some reversals. The match actually started with a bit of like Johnny Saint style wrestling, but done with a modern twist, with like Ospreay flipping it into an arm wringer and stuff, flipping like an arm wringer back into his own arm lock, which is cool. And it got a "This is awesome" chant 6 minutes in. I mean, by today's standards, I'm not sure. You probably see a match like this on Dynamite for free, like very easily. But yeah, the end was like pretty cool. Ospreay, like, you know, it was like a one-wing angel into a Spanish fly, then a cutter, and there was a corkscrew shooting star into a knee, like into Omega's knees. But then there was like Omega grabbed him for a small package. There was a reversal by Ospreay, and then he did the V trigger into the one-winged angel, and it wasn't called the V trigger then. It was like just some jumping knee thing, and Omega gets the pin, and as I thought he would at this point. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Probably 3.5 to 3 3/4 stars if you're going by these today's standards. Ospreay was probably like about a year or so away from those matches with Ricochet, but we had all heard of him by this point. This is a point where like people were like making rumbles about Ospreay, and he was like touring all up and across down the country. He never really came down my way though, so I didn't see Ospreay wrestle until All In 2023. My girlfriend saw him against Walter at Defiant, and that's a very good match too. But yeah, it was good, and like it's just interesting how you can see how both of these men have progressed. I mean, Omega was especially coming into his prime and his own, like just on the cusp of it, I guess, for like late 2015. But that would go into the stratosphere by like 2017 until like he had the diverticulitis really. But now I'm going to rewatch their Wrestle Kingdom 17 match from 2023, which was my favourite match ever at that time, and I'll like jot down some thoughts and like give it to you in this form again. Okay, I have just watched Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay at Wrestle Kingdom 17, January 2023. Do I still feel the same way as I did when I first watched it? Not really, unfortunately, no. It doesn't mean it's bad or it's worse. It's still like a phenomenal match. Still has amazing storytelling and pacing and grit and determination and fire. But I think there's something about if you're there in the moment and it's happening live, especially with Wrestle Kingdom matches, there's just like an insane rush you feel like when you're there with them, with this happening, even if you're watching it on the telly at the time. But yeah, like something to remember is like New Japan was still kind of, I mean, the country of Japan was still kind of in the pandemic, maybe just coming out, and were later to come out of it than in the Western world, I guess. You know, so I think like this was one of the first New Japan shows out of the pandemic where the audience could cheer rather than stomp and clap. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I feel like that I remember that being a thing. And yeah, I just feel like the crowd were, I mean, obviously they would be a bit more subdued, but they were still into the match and stuff. But, and nevertheless, here, like, this was what the match was like. Omega has this like epic wing thing, like on his entrance, where he like slams his arm out and the wing goes on the video screen. To me, that's like fucking phenomenal. And as the Final Fantasy One Wing Angel music, which I know more from my girlfriend playing that Kingdom Hearts music game where you have to get all the notes and stuff. Because I've never completed Final Fantasy 7. I've got about 4 hours in. I left it. I'll go back to it one day, don't worry. You don't give a shit about that. Ospreay's entrance has a bit of those Omega Terminator drums in it, very subtly. Then it goes into a piano rendition of Elevated, then like has his proper entrance, and it has this dream match feel, which is interesting considering their last singles match, like 7 and a bit years earlier. I guess, like, to many people, that might have been a dream match at that time. But where they were in their careers at this point, this felt like a huge dream match that was a bit of time coming. You know, I wish I could, like, remember more about how it came about. Probably should have read that. But I remember, like, being very excited. I know Omega was just kind of back in AEW doing a trios thing with the Elite, and Will was calling him out and stuff, and it led to this, and it led to like who is better. Will still seemed a bit like the underdog at this point, and Don Callis was on commentary. The match starts off like funnily quite similar to their like first match, with a bit of headlocks and arm ringers and reversals and stuff, and there's like slaps and balances of ego, and there's a hurricanrana to a plunger outside by Will, and then like he hits the guardrail, Kenny hits him against the guardrail with like a few minutes in, and then there's a brutal shove to Ospreay from the guardrail to the apron. You can't escape in the ring. Big whip into the turnbuckle by Kenny. Kenny rips off the turnbuckle and major kicks to back. Now this is a big thing. Kenny is like working on Will's lower back like throughout the match. Really, psychology. But yes, harsh backbreaker and some great selling by Will Ospreay. You can see how far he's come along in the game in these 7 years or so. He's great at selling, to be honest, as is Omega as well. And he draws that emotion out of you when you like watch this. Because people say what they will, but they're good storytellers, these guys. You know, there's like chops and kicks on the apron. Omega gets a table and, you know, slams it on Will's back and stomps. Then he like does a double foot stomp through the table with the table lying on Will's back and like puts a hole directly into the table. It's like one of those Japanese tables that like breaks really harshly and they look more real than the American wrestling tables. Yeah, here's Johnny. You get the face through there. Ospreay fires up and he like suplexes Kenny onto the metal underbit of the table and it looked like it really fucking hurt. And there's a great Sky Twister press to the outside by Will Ospreay. V-trigger to the back of Will's head and into a poison Rana. Attempted Tiger suplex from the top by Omega. Will escapes into a spin kick and the Oz Cutter. Big chop from Ospreay. DDT by Kenny to Ospreay on top of the exposed turnbuckle. And yeah, then there's lots of blood drawing from the top of Will's head. And it's all on the mat on the outside. And there's a bit of a hush. And the commentary are like, oh my god. And it looks fucking brutal and horrible. And obviously, a lot of the time, blood adds to the drama of wrestling matches. And this is no different. How's Will going to get through this? How is he going to come out alive? We will see. You know? And yeah, it's like dropkick slide on from Kenny to Will onto the barricade. The Terminator beats into the Tom Paycon. Hello. Kenny slams Will's bloody head into the table. Ospreay shoves Red Shoes. Kenny Snapdragon suplexes twice. Will looks fucked by this point. You know, barely above water kind of thing. Ospreay grabs leg to store him, like as he's like Kenny's doing these vicious knees. V-trigger sends Will outside. Omega counters something into Will slamming head into exposed turnbuckle. Then V-triggers it. Then there's a German off the turnbuckle, right? Will onto Will. Will sat up. Kenny standing. I'm just like reading my notes here, you know, but it's kind of like what was coming out of me as I was like watching it. Will sat up. Kenny does standing V-triggers twice, then gets caught. Will fires up, gets punched, and does Kawada kicks and a reversal. Then Will hits a Liger bomb. There's like intense struggle here by this point. Double hidden blade into Oscutter from turnbuckle. And then like a one wing angel gets counters into a Styles Clash. Ospreay is reincarnated at this point. He's like, fuck, I need to like fuck up, fucking burst up and beat Kenny Omega. And he reincarnates into the hidden braid. Then it's a Stormbreaker, then a V-trigger, then a hidden braid. And while they're doing this, they're holding the wrists. There's forearms into a straight jacket German by Kenny. Then Ospreay takes more knees. And as he's taking knees, he's like this, and then he spits defiantly. Is that all you got, Kenny? When he's like half fucking dead. And then there's a defiant one-winged angel, and then Kenny Omega beats him. And this is the right call at this point. You know, like Will Ospreay at this point is kind of like getting into that mode where Kenny Omega was just before like Wrestle Kingdom in 2007, just before like the Okada matches, I guess. And yeah, it was a hell of a defiant performance, and it is an incredible match still. Definitely worth a watch, definitely worth a rewatch. I don't feel like it's like the best modern wrestling match ever, like I did when I like first watched it live. But it's certainly up there, and it's like very good. I'm going to watch the Forbidden Door match and give more thoughts on that and scattered notes and stuff. Yeah, like it's obviously like a huge step up from the PWG match. They're both like fully formed wrestlers. Like Kenny's kind of like not in his kind of like in his final form, like in still kind of in his prime, and Will's like there in his prime, like just getting, and like you could argue that he's still kind of like on the journey to his prime at this point. Now, I will watch the Forbidden Door match, and from what I remember about this match was it was also great. It was like more the inverse of like this match, with like Will doing a brutal beating to Kenny, and it happened in Canada, so I'll give my thoughts on those. I may look different, I may be in a different room by this point because I've got to go and do stuff, but yeah, that is gonna be next. Okay, I've just watched Kenny Omega vs. Will Ospreay from Forbidden Door 2023. This is like a few hours after I've watched the Wrestle Kingdom match, and it's not, I don't think it is like the same match but inversed as that one, but it has a lot of similarities and callbacks to that Wrestle Kingdom match, and it has a very different atmosphere because it's a rowdy Canadian audience, and I guess they're like quite far from the pandemic compared to how Japan was. And yeah, and like in this match, it's clear that Will is playing the heel role, and it is pretty violent. I don't know, I mean, I feel like the New Japan match is slightly more violent with some of the spots, and with less as well. I couldn't really tell you whether it's a better match as such, but I think I prefer the New Japan match. This Forbidden Door match is fucking great, obviously, like it's really good. But I do think like if there was about 5-10 minutes shaved off, it could be a lot better. But yeah, I've got some notes here, and I will go through the notes. So like in the video package, there's like Will wanting and like not gonna wait for Kenny to pass the torch. He will take it. He wants his revenge for like how he was treated at Wrestle Kingdom, like the brutality of that. He has Don Callis on his side. In the intro for Will Ospreay, there's like a video package with him watching a video wall of him getting beaten up in the New Japan match, and that's like makes for a good intro. Omega has his orchestral Final Fantasy style music he comes out to, and straight off the bat there's a ring bell pop. Like everyone's hugely excited for this match. There's like the other matches, there's the intro with the like arm wringer, chin lock, headlock takeover into head scissors and chops. You know, like there's some familiarity here, like compared to the last two matches. There's a try for the One Wing Angel and Oscar Snapdragon, early counters and reversals. Get a corny ass "this is wrestling" chant, you know, because that's what happens. Ospreay's clearly showing a lot more aggression in this match, you know, with like lots of stiff kicks and chops. Kenny goes from the Hurricanrana into a "you can't escape." Tries to do the Terminator Tope con Hilo, and it's interrupted by Don Callis, like grabbing his leg. Callis gets ejected. Ospreay does a nice crossbody to the floor. Will throws Omega into the steps and ring posts. Ospreay does a nice backbreaker. He's like working on the knee and back of Omega. Initially, you may think, oh yeah, it's like calling back to New Japan, where Kenny was working on Will's back that time. And then I get reminded that Kenny had a hernia and was off for a while. So this plays into the story nicely. Omega does the over-the-top leg drop, a big kick to Will's gut, more chops, nice enziguri. Ospreay does a shooting star press while Omega's hung on the ropes, then an Oscutter from the apron. And then there's a little thing saying AEW Fight Forever out Thursday. And that's the Thursday after Forbidden Door 2023. And it's crazy it was that long ago. And who knows if they'll do another game, because that game was a lot of fun, but it felt like half finished. Like, it felt a bit cheap in some bits, but so much fun. And Ospreay whacks Kenny's head hard on the announce table, and then he blades and starts bleeding, and this mirrors what Kenny did to Will at the Wrestle Kingdom match, with like the hard headshots into that like Japanese table, which is like hard as fuck. And Kenny stumbling and selling so well to Will's punches. I'd say it's quite Terry Funk-esque how he was stumbling about. And Will, the sick fuck, like has some of Kenny's blood on his arms, and he licks it, and everyone's going, "You sick fuck," and he's like, "Yeah, I know," like a smug bastard heel. And Will's doing this very well, like, and you can just see like the growth in Will Ospreay as a wrestler through this time, like 2023, 2024. He really is that like main event player that just like can draw you in with what he's doing. And in this match, Kenny tries to come back with a roaring elbow. There's a V-trigger. There's blood on Omega's eyes. A kid on the outside tells Will to shut up. He grabs his Canadian flag, then flosses it and puts it up his nose too. And I say that's Shawn Michaels-esque, like how he did in '97. He drives, then like Kenny drives Will's head into the steps. Then Will's bleeding. He's bleeding like pretty bad. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's probably like less shocking seeing as I saw the New Japan match earlier. But it is like that, nearly that level of blood, but not really. And there's a DDT on an upturned side of the steps. There's great pacing in this match. You know, it's like more like, I guess, playing to the crowd, and more like deliberate stuff, but also like fast action, you know, like impactful action, and it works really well. So, like, there's an armbar, elbows, Ospreay powers out, a German suplex exchange, back headbutt from Will into a V-trigger, Kenny into a Spanish fly. Will goes for a sharpshooter. I wrote down, I bet the fucker prefers Shawn to Brett, doesn't he, the asshole? But then he does the real asshole thing of doing the crippler crossface, and the crowd boo the fuck out of him, which is like well deserved. No one wants to think about fucking Benoit, do they? You know. Yeah. Kawada kicks, vicious kicks to Omega's head. Kenny counters an Oscutter while struggling. Snapdragon, V-trigger, Poison Rana, pile driver. Sky Twister press to the outside by Will. There's a hidden blade, dodge reversal, into a Ligo bomb by Will. Oscutter top rope, almost like the best moonsault ever. Stormbreaker attempt reversed by a backwards pile driver, kind of cop killer thing. You know, very like Guerrero-esque move. Then Callis is back. Omega doing knees like the end of the New Japan match, where like Will's barely functioning, and like Omega's just like, I want to get this fucking guy down and win. And then he tries to interject with a V-trigger when Kenny goes for a V-trigger and grabs onto Will and like hands him the screwdriver, and Will gets out of a one-winged angel with by like bashing with a screwdriver, and then there's a hidden blade and a Stormbreaker, and Kenny Omega kicks out at one, or puts his foot on the rope with one, and that gets a huge pop from the crowd. Callis whispers to Will, standing knee like Kenny, then one winged angel by Ospreay. You know, Ospreay did the knees like how Kenny did to him, when like Kenny was like just barely above water. And yeah, Kenny kicks out one, slap fest, a knee, a super kick, a brain buster by Kenny, one winged angel position into a low German V trigger, then another one winged angel reversed into a hidden blade, then a nasty tiger driver 91 caused much discourse online, if you remember that. And then another hidden blade, and then a stormbreaker, and Will Ospreay gets the pin. And I guess you're meant to assume that Don Callis whispered, "Oh, do the Tiger Driver," to Will Ospreay to get the win for that match. And yeah, it is like an epic fucking match. But I think I like how the match in New Japan went slightly more than that. But yeah, it's like great stuff and worth a rewatch. Those two matches are classic modern day matches, and we wonder what's going to happen at All In. What kind of match could this be? I feel like this is going to be slightly different, maybe drastically different to the matches that they previously have had. You know, Kenny Omega, he's still amazing, and I think there's obviously like struggles with his diverticulitis, but I don't know if it's fair to say he's in his prime. However, he has been having high caliber matches this year with like Swerve and MJF, and I think this will be a special match in like Wembley Stadium. You know, Ospreay has the thing where like the Death Riders have like helped him to get to the level of where he wants to be after his neck injury, but he's like wants to like shove all that aside, and Kenny's kind of like, oh, I need to be the Kenny Omega of old. But I don't think he's totally embraced that heel Kenny Omega character from New Japan and 2021 AEW when he had the belt before. So we will see. I mean, obviously with it being in Wembley Stadium, like Will Ospreay should be the huge babyface going in, and you would think that Kenny Omega would embrace that. But Kenny Omega is hugely loved over here. You know, he's one of the best ever in the world. And Will Ospreay, I mean, we're all assuming that's going to be his crowning moment, and it really should be. Like, this should be the moment where he wins the belt and becomes the champion, because I think there's like a lot of mileage with that for the rest of the year for AEW if he like goes and wins this. And like, obviously there's like the layers of story with the Death Riders and Kenny, and like obviously MJF and the Casino Gauntlet as well. I mean, I'm guessing the safe route would be to have MJF win that, but I'm just not 100% sure at this point. And I think Carl Fletcher has got to be in the mix. Like, if Will Ospreay wins the belt, I feel like Carl Fletcher, by maybe later this year or Revolution next year, he could be the one to take it off him, and we'll have another good young champion. But I'm really looking forward to the match next week, and I know this is like a long video and like lots of like scattered analysis, but I hope you've taken something from this video and enjoy it. And I probably will have a video about All In at some point, but before then there'll be a music video. And yeah, take it easy, guys.